Hello everyone and welcome to the program. This is Sunday Politics on Channels Television. I'm sure Kimbaloye in Lagos. Happy Democracy Day. Might be in order, I guess, considering it was yesterday, and perhaps many might still be in the euphoria of the commemoration of the June 12, which was declared 3 years ago by the Buhari administration as Nigeria's Democracy Day. So some Nigerians took to the streets, some of them carrying the messages on their minds, on their placards. But that's what you perhaps will see in many places. But the situation got a bit smoky and rather unusual, or should I say, too much to handle for some of the protesters when the police dispersed them with tear gas canisters, and you could see some of them taking to their heels. Things took another dimension on the streets of Abuja, in the nation's capital, when some of the protesters clashed with pro-Buhari protesters also gathered outside the Unity Fountain in Abuja, insisting that the federal government is doing its best to protect the country's democracy. It was an ugly scene. There you see. However, the day was marked differently in some states where governors were part of the exercise. A case in point is in Ogun State. There you see the governor, Dapo Abiodun, who is monitoring the March Past parade there in Ogun State with workers and some of the citizens marching past and waving. But in Oyo State, Governor Seyi Makinde, who was driving past, saw some of the protesters, waited and addressed them. All right. June 12 is a reminder of so many things. The struggle for democracy, clamor for good governance, and perhaps a major one is a remembrance of the election perceived to be the freest and fairest in our nation's political history. So when June 12 comes to mind, you think about the need to have good election, good governance, and the aspiration of the people should be brought to the table. So President Buhari spoke. He gave a Democracy Day national broadcast, and many reactions have trailed that broadcast, plus some of the things he said prior to that Saturday. He's been speaking since about Thursday or so in different interviews. Well, you may have come across an open letter written by a Nigerian poet and author, Chukumerije. That open letter has been circulated widely. He raised series of issues, and tonight we're going to be discussing some of the content of Chukumerije's open letter to President Muhammadu Buhari, which centers around the issues of democracy and the manner in which the nation has been run under the Buhari administration. Chukumerije joins us from our Abuja studio. Thank you, Mr. Chukumerije, for your time tonight, and thank you for creating time to talk about your open letter. Let's begin the conversation by getting some clarity on what you captured in your open letter, which is being circulated widely, and you have explained why you wrote it, other than your usual well-managed few lines in your poems. What propelled you to pen that open letter?
I was responding to certain things that Mr. President said in an interview he gave last week, particularly concerning open grazing and the farmer header crisis and his attitude to it, as well as his attitude towards certain unrest, particularly in the southeastern part of the country. I was moved to write the letter because I am a concerned Nigerian, and I feel that the country is in a very difficult spell at the moment, and that it's very important for people that truly care about Nigeria, that truly love Nigeria, to really have their voices heard in the debate. It's beginning to feel like the debate is polarized between two extremes. And I felt it's important for a voice in the middle to be projected, for perspectives that come from a pan-Nigerian perspective to be projected into the public space. And that was what motivated me to write that letter.
Okay, so before we get so deep into the letter, the president addressed the nation. Let me get, I guess you watched that national broadcast, and it's being also reported widely since yesterday. What's your view or your general assessment of the president's broadcast?
My general assessment is that the president might be a bit removed from popular feelings in society. There's a bit of a dislocation or disarticulation between what he thinks and how people are feeling generally in society. And that there is a need for the president to improve the effectiveness of his communication to Nigerian citizens at this point in time. There's a great need for more effective communication from the presidency.
But does the broadcast in any way answer any of the questions you raised in your open letter?
Not really. None of those. The issues I raised in the letter, I feel, are still to be addressed.
Okay, let's perhaps go deeper into your open letter now, and let me take a portion of what you wrote in the letter. Permit me to read in your part of the open letter, and you said, and I quote, "Attempting to force the country back to the days when a vast country and a relatively small and dispersed population made open grazing sustainable is as futile as banning Twitter. That train has left the station. Already under your watch, the historic Hausa Fulani classification has, for the first time in living memory, been broken. If you keep trying to send us back in time with a policy position that considers the root cause of Nigeria's most lethal crises, the herders' farmer crisis, as the inability of other ethnic groups to understand the Fulani, your only success will be further isolating the Fulani as targets." Could you expatiate on what you meant by that?
I was responding to the president's comment on directing his government to go back to certain things gazetted in the 1960s concerning grazing routes and grazing reserves for nomadic Fulani herdsmen to encourage open grazing as his solution to the farmer herder crisis. And I was trying to point out that the realities of the 1960s are no longer the realities of today. That open grazing was sustainable in the 1960s because we lived in a different kind of country. The country was vast, the population was not as much as we have today. You didn't have cities like Abuja the way it is, so the country has grown. And it's no longer possible for you to carry out open grazing in a sustainable manner. That open grazing today is leading to conflicts that are causing more deaths than any other conflict in Nigeria today, year on year, and this is very easy to verify. So that it's the only thing that can be achieved by really trying to force us back into the 1960s template is that there will be growing animosity against the Fulani as an ethnic group, which really shouldn't be, but people lash out in anger, and suddenly the Fulani has become a polarizing figure. And we never really had that in Nigerian history before. Before, the average Southerner would refer to the Hausa Fulani as if they are one ethnic group. All of a sudden today, you have people isolating the Fulani and identifying them or targeting them. And one of the root causes for this is the sense that we have a president who tilts a bit too much in his assessment of social issues, or panders a bit too much to the interests of the nomadic Fulani. I made the point that open grazing is a cultural practice. But culture is not static, it's dynamic. It has to evolve to keep up with times. And the times have changed. And that cultural practice can also change. It's possible. And in fact, the government, this present government, has its own, it has the national livestock transformation plan, for instance, that recognizes this, that open grazing is a cultural practice that needs to change. So it was surprising to then hear the president speaking, and not even speaking in the spirit of the plan of his own government. So does it mean that the president has a different view while the government has a different, there's that disarticulation I'm talking about. But open grazing is a cultural practice that needs to evolve with the times. Because now the social cost of open grazing is getting too much. From Zamfara to Bayelsa, people are dying on a daily basis. This is not something that should be condoned or allowed to carry on in that way. We have to find a way of encouraging nomadic Fulanis to move from open grazing to more sedentary forms of livestock management. So that's the point I was making in the letter.
Okay, it does look like you touched on it, because I was going to ask you, because you said in your letter, you were referring to the president, you said your solution to the farmer herder crisis is not the correct one. So I was going to ask, what then do you suppose is a solution?
And I mentioned that the government already has a plan, the National Economic Council. From January 2019, 2 years ago, they came together and put together the National Livestock Transformation Plan. It's a plan in the right direction because it comes out of a multi-stakeholder approach. So the federal government, the state government, farmers, herders, everybody sits around the table and dialogues and finds a way to make this thing happen that takes everybody's interests into consideration. So I think that is a plan that can be built on. And in 10, 15 years, we can see a shift. It's never easy to change a cultural practice. It's not easy. But that is a plan that is moving in the right direction. And one would have expected to see the president, bringing his moral authority as president to back a plan like that, rather than beginning to suggest this sort of unilateral, everybody just understand the Fulani and accommodate the Fulani. It's a multicultural society. It's a diverse society. You have to balance the rights of one against the others. And if you find that, the Fulani is the recurring decimal in conflicts across the country, in different states, different ethnic groups, different religions, the recurring decimal is armed Fulani headsmen in Zamfara, in Kaduna, in Benue, in Nasarawa, in Plateau, then it means that it falls on the Fulani to make the adjustment. You can't ask everybody else to adjust to accommodate one person. It's for that one person to adjust to accommodate everybody else. So there is already a plan that has come out of this multi-stakeholder approach that needs to be backed and evolved, rather than trying to sort of impose unilateral solutions on a society like ours. I feel that it will only lead to more conflict.
Let me take another portion of your letter, and I'd like you to answer to some of the issues you raised here, perhaps clarify more. You said, and I quote, "Our founders and our current constitution recognize that one Nigeria is a construct that has to be proactively invested in and built if it is to be realized, and that one of the most important tools for doing this is running an inclusive government. That is a government that listens. That is a government that engages with different points of view. That is a government that carries everyone along. That is a government that, according to Sir Ahmadu Bello, does not pretend that we do not have differences. And of course, you made mention of the infamous 5% comment. Let me get your view on this, and perhaps what you've raised as an inclusive government. Could you perhaps give us a sense of what prompted your opinion on this very point? Do you have any specific example in mind?
Yes, I mean, I was, first of all, that comment came, first of all, out of the fact that the president had sort of said that we need to understand, the Fulani particularly, and had talked about his relatives from Niger and other, countries outside Nigeria. And I had asked the question, where does loyalty lie? Does it lie to the ethnic group, or does it lie to the nation? And I had pointed out that for the average Nigerian, all of us have this internal struggle, because we all have ethnic groups and we're all citizens of this nation. And we all struggle with this sometimes, this sense of divided loyalty. Which one should I be more loyal to, my ethnic group or my nation? And because we have that dual sort of identity, I made the point that that's one of the reasons why a cardinal principle of the Nigerian state is to run an inclusive government. That inclusiveness, or a sense of belonging in the Nigerian nation, helps us all overcome our natural instinct towards tribalism. Because if we live in a state that is accommodating, if we live in a state that is just to all, then we're encouraged to offer our loyalty to that state. And I made that point, and that is why an inclusive government is a cardinal principle of the Nigerian state. And specific examples that have triggered this, this letter is 6 years down the road. But the comment the president made early on in his government administration about the 95% and the 5%, that comment, I don't know whether there is a single comment that he has made throughout his presidency that has had a more damaging effect on a sense of belonging, particularly for the Southeasterners or people from the Southeastern region. It was not a comment that a president of a country like ours should ever have made, because it gave the impression that the president saw a certain part of the country as not fully deserving of his full attention, his warmth, his love, and things like that. And that immediately begins to breed a sense of marginalization, alienation. And it's in that gap, when the people feel alienated from the state, that's where you start having the seeds of unrest and tension that we're seeing around the country. We have also seen very, very visible lopsidedness in the president's appointments, particularly into key sensitive positions. And it is something that I feel that the Nigerian state, traditionally, effort is always made to make the government, on every aspect of the government, as representative as possible. For this reason, to create a sense of belonging, which is very critical in a diverse society. So I also listened to the president's explanation, particularly when he was talking about the appointments of the Chief of Army Staff. And I felt that his explanation was actually very rational and very correct. That, listen, sometimes you have to make appointments solely on the basis of merit, and that he appointed the best man for the job in that situation. And I agree with him, because he very clearly appointed a soldier's soldier, and somebody who has the heart and the trust and respect of soldiers. And anybody who follows my writings knows that I'm a very committed believer in meritocracy. But I also live in a diverse society, and I know that the meritocratic principle has to be delicately balanced against the representative principle. Government needs to be representative, at the same time, government needs to be competent. And these two principles need to be balanced against each other. You cannot throw one away for the other. You must always take both into consideration if Nigeria is going to be a stable union. So if you look across the entire spectrum of the security architecture, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the police, the civil defense, the intelligence agencies, and you find that there is no representation at all from a part of the country. It is something that everybody should sit down and query because, for instance, now you have unrest in that part of the country, and none of the architects of a security solution are from there. It's very important in the meetings where security solutions for the Southeast is being designed, there are people from there in those meetings to bring the local flavor into the design of solutions for that region. This is the reason why representation is important in diverse societies. So it's that inability of the president to balance the meritocratic principle against the principle for representation. Let me make it clear that I agree that it is very important, and there are certain times and certain frontline services like security, education, health. There are certain frontline ministries where really meritocracy should be the first consideration. But that principle just needs to be balanced. And I'm happy that the president himself made the argument for meritocracy because the argument is then available also tomorrow, for a different president to also use to justify making certain appointments into areas he considers vital. So I have no problem with the meritocratic principle, but it simply needs to be balanced. That's what our Constitution asks for, balanced against the need for the government to be representative. And I hope that the president will take this into consideration.
So you highlighted a lot of things. Since we're talking about Nigeria's democracy, this is a day after June 12th, Nigeria's Democracy Day. And some of the issues that you raise, they've raised questions on the principles of democracy. And you're talking about President Buhari and some of the things you disagree with. And you're raising your views on some of those things you need to pay attention to. For example, we know that President Buhari spent most of his youthful young age as a military officer, and we understand that he's a military man by training. But he is said, and he was quoted to have said that he's a converted Democrat. With some of the things that you've raised in your open letter, do you have any reason to believe otherwise?
What I would say is that the president is a converted Democrat, but may still be struggling with some of his military tendencies. It's very hard to break a lifelong habit. So we have a president that consistently complains about how human rights and democratic processes hamper him, slow him down, prevent him from being able to do his job. So that is clearly someone that is not comfortable, totally comfortable with democratic processes, that feels that they are a hindrance. There's that sense that they are a hindrance. So sometimes he seems to come across as, listen, I need to have totalitarian or authoritarian powers in order to fix Nigeria, which is sort of the military mentality that Nigerians are hard-headed people. You have to use iron hand over them, But in truth, you cannot whip or frog jump a country into development. You cannot do that. And modern concepts of development are centered around the concept of human rights, an expanded concept of human rights, not just fundamental human rights, but also economic rights, rights to health, right to education, right to a good job. This is what development means, to facilitate access to these rights for your citizens. So denying rights in any way cannot facilitate development. It can only precipitate tensions and conflicts and insecurity. So we need the government or the president to really become a believer in the importance of human rights, allowing Nigerians to have full access to the full range of human rights is the object of development. It is not, it is a contradiction in terms to say that you can develop a country, or in order to develop a country, you must first deny or in any way infringe on the rights of its citizens. You know, development is freedom, according to Amartya Sen, the Nobel laureate in economics. Development is the freedom of the individual to own and exercise his individual rights.
All right.
So the government should not interfere with that. The government should rather be enhancing our capacity to enjoy our rights.
Perhaps on the final note, so we can wrap up this conversation around your open letter and some of the issues that you have raised. And you raised a point around the agitations in the land and the reason or the cause for the agitation and some of the violence and disagreement that we have seen in the country. And you also mentioned that part of it is the consideration for an inclusivity by the President Buhari administration. But do you suppose that heading into 2023 election, would you suppose that zoning the presidency to the east or to the southeast will be an answer to such a dilemma?
It will contribute. It may not be the final and total answer, but it's a step in that direction. Like I said, by inclination and ideological belief, I am a meritocrat. But I am also pragmatic, that I understand the society I live in and the times that I live in. I believe that this is a time for us as a country to make concessions for the sake of peace. Yeah, there has to be peace first. My people say, ndubisi. You know, that we have to be alive first before anything else can happen. You know, so for the sake of peace, I feel certain concessions should be made. Zoning is something that I find uncomfortable. It sits uncomfortable with me as an individual. But I have come to recognize the wisdom of our founding fathers in insisting on things like federal character, insisting on things like representation, because of the nature of our society and the strength of our ethnic identities. So it is important to have that open and frank discussion about access to power and competition for power. If open competition for power is always going to lead to conflict, then let's just make it formal.
All right.
Power will be rotated from north to south. Instead of having this gentleman's agreement, let's just sit down, formalize it. It will stay in the north for 8 years, it will come to the south for 8 years, so that we can remove that element of conflict. Because really the important thing is not who is in power, but for us to develop institutions that ensure that whoever is in power is not able to, if they decide to begin to do bad policies and bad government, that there are enough institutional checks to prevent them from damaging society, just like we saw in America. So we need strong institutions.
All right.
You know, but I believe that an Igbo presidency may help, you know, go a long way to contributing to dousing tensions at the moment.
Thank you so much tonight, DK, for your thoughts and sharing a larger view of your open letter with us tonight on Channels Television. DK Chukumerije, a Nigerian poet, thank you indeed for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Up next on the program, and after the break, our conversation continues on Democracy Day, June 12, and President Buhari's approach. A lot of issues on what he said, what he did not say, and the way forward for Nigeria. Join us again, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. Let's get back to the conversation. I spoke moments ago with Nigerian poet DK Chukumerije on his open letter to President Muhammadu Buhari. Let's get some other perspectives now on the issue of Nigeria's democracy, June 12, the commemoration and democracy under President Muhammadu Buhari's administration. I'm being joined on the program by a former minority leader in the House of Representatives and a chieftain of the ruling All Progressives Congress, Honorable Farouk Adamu Aliyu. He joins us from Birnin Kudu in Jigawa State. Thank you, Honorable, for joining us tonight. And let's perhaps begin the conversation on the issues that were raised by DK Chukumerije. You listened to some of those. Let me allow you to respond to some of those issues he raised and the concerns he has on the administration.
Well, you see, some of these things are very subjective, and you cannot stop people from complaining, from saying their minds, from deciding for themselves what they think or how the country should be run. Unfortunately, some of us don't see themselves as Nigerians first. I and a lot of us see ourselves as Nigerians. Like for me, first a Nigerian, a Fulani man. Now, President Buhari never said that open grazing, it's allowed. What he said, if probably my brother DK didn't understand, was that these cattle routes that have been there from in the 60s, or earlier than 60s, probably even when Nigeria was created, that these routes were there. And somehow, because of globalization, the population that he said, now these routes have been encroached. We're in a country where the Fulanis, sadly, are being targeted, as endangered species. Is any Nigerian saying that the Fulanis have no right whatsoever to go with their cows from Jigawa to Bayelsa? No. All the president was saying was that, look, these routes are nobody's route, they're government routes. They should be allowed. And then these herders should be confined to a place. When you say open grazing, there are grazing reserves all over the country. Which means if any Fulani decides to deviate, to encroach any farmer's land, should be sanctioned. But let us not see this thing as a Fulani versus TV or something like that. We are Nigerians first. So let us see, how do we accommodate these things? The Constitution of this country guarantees freedom of movement. The Constitution of this country, guarantees for you to stay wherever you want to stay. And that's why I said I don't want to look at it from the Igbo man, the Fulani man, or the Yoruba man. We are what we are by birth. And then look, if the political elites, or the elites in this country generally, decide, if the elites decide that we will live in peace, we will. Because most of these things are political. And I'm telling you they are political because when Nigerians say that President Buhari refused to speak, he is not talking. Now he has spoken. And some people are saying, why is he speaking? Or why did he speak the way he did? Now, you cannot stop people from saying whatever they want to say. But then sadly, my brother, the way he was speaking that, probably the right direction is to give the Igbo presidency. There is nothing wrong. Probably my party could decide that. But should Nigerians be bullied, blackmailed into giving anybody presidency? This thing should be negotiated. This thing should be done in such a way that, look, why it's give and take. Nobody says the Northerners must continue to be president of this country. In fact, it's politics, and politics is a game of number. But I assure you, and I assure my brother and my Igbo brothers that, look, Igbo presidency, it's possible. But certainly not through blackmail, not through intimidation, not through brigandage, not through secessionism, but through dialogue. Okay. Let's dialogue. Let's see ourselves as one people, that if you want leadership, you want to lead the country, you do not there are my brothers in the Southeast who on a daily basis, preach violence, talk about secession. How do you intend to tell us that you want to be president if some of you don't believe in the country? So that's what we're saying. You see, thank God like the Indigo who came out to say that, look, we believe in one Nigeria. Now, but I need them to do more, to condemn in the strongest term the secessionist movement by some of our brothers in the southeastern part of this country. And look, we need peace in this country to be whatever we want to be. And with these agitations, with this thing talking about because Buhari is a Fulani man, it is not. It's got nothing to do with tribe. And nobody says that leadership has got anything to do with tribe or religion or ethnicity. There could be a very good leader from any part of this country. So let us as a people decide we want to live in peace. Let us as a people give the government a chance. And of course, giving the government a chance does not mean by allowing the government to do whatever the government wants to do. The Nigerian public are free, just like now. My brother is talking about the government does not allow opposition or does not give freedom. How free can you allow people, the NSAS, demonstrating in this country for upwards of 3 weeks? Burnt places, police stations, and so on. The government didn't do nothing, all in trying to show freedom, liberty. But then
all right, Honorable Aliyu, let's take it one after the other. So you started on the note of the open grazing. There is a national conversation about that matter, and it does look like a lot of the governors and leaders are tilting and are agreeing that ranching is the way to go. Open grazing is out of fashion. But make us understand why some Nigerians will agree, for example, to what the president said in part of his speech when he said that there are plans to reclaiming cattle grazing routes in the country, when obviously there are stronger or there are louder conversations around abolishing open grazing.
Well, you see, these lands of these cattle routes, they are nobody's, they are government property. It's a designated route for cattle to move. And if that routes are encroached, are inappropriately taken, they should be reclaimed back. And other things should be given, compensated to people. Because look, you cannot stop the cows, the Fulanis moving from any part of this country. It is in this country, it is not President Buhari who created even the nomadic education. Because the people of this country, or the government back in the days, recognized that, look, there are nomadic people in this country. We have the fishermen, we have the Fulani herders. So, which means the government of this country recognizes that there are some people that will need to leave their place of domicile. And these things happen like the cattle. You know, the Fulanis move just for pastoral purposes. Because during the dry season, from this part of the country, going down south, you find greener pastures there. That's why they go there.
But sorry to cut in. Apologies, Honorable, because I like you to explain to Nigerians. The point I'm trying you to explain to us is some of the leaders in the country have come to say, look, we agree that people have this cultural orientation of moving around the country, but they said this is the root cause of the problem because of the issues of infiltration. And they say that southern governors and leaders have agreed that there should be a stoppage to movement of cattle by foot down the south, and open grazing should be stopped. Why should that be a problem, Honorable?
Well, first of all, it should be a problem because you do things by laws of the land. You cannot sit in as governors or as president to say this is the law. The law is the law. The law of this country has not banned these cattle routes. So the governors or anybody cannot sit and say we have banned from today. There has to be a process. Now, do we as a people agree that the cows should stop moving? If the generality view of Nigerians is that they should stop moving, so be it. But then it has to be done in a systematic, and a civil way, not through brigandage.
Well, it does look like a very popular opinion down south.
Well, it is also subjective when you say down south. I don't want us to be talking about north-south, please.
No, because Nigerians today. It comes to that, Honorable. Apologies to cut in again. It does come to that because whatever made all the governors of the south meet, and there are different groups in the south, leadership of some of the major ethnic nationalities in the southern part of the country, where they say kidnapping, maiming, killing of farmers and farming communities are happening, and they say this is the problem, and they came together to say the solution is to ban open grazing, which they did in the southern region of the country. And that's the reason why I ask, why should that be a problem when they say this is the reason why our people are being killed? Blood is being shed every day, bloodletting is happening, and we cannot allow it to happen. And the leaders have said we will need to stop it, and this is the way to stop it. And that's why I asked, why should that be a problem?
Well, it will be a problem because the governors of the northern part of this country did not meet and say we ban all persons from certain ethnic group in this country that bring in narcotics to this part of the country. Or the northern governors did not say, look, we have armed robbers from also certain part of the country. They haven't done that.
But that
And
is not the same, Honorable.
talking like
Apologies.
this.
Sorry.
I'm
Sorry.
coming.
Just a moment,
When we
please.
start talking like this.
Hold on, Honorable. Let me put this right. So let's even historically trace some of these issues. It was the northern governors that met first. The governors forum met before the southern governors met. So it was an agreement with the northern governors. I've had interviews with a few governors in the north. Governor of Kano State, for example, does not support it. The northern governors met, the governors forum met, then the southern governors forum met. It's even the southern governors that came to this position last. So, and that is the issue that a lot of people have raised. The governors, it was the unanimity of the governors of Nigeria, the 36 states, that said open grazing should be abolished.
Okay, listen, it should be abolished, but you don't say it by the word of mouth. If you want it to be abolished, there are certain processes that have to be done. But you don't start intimidating or killing or maiming certain ethnic group because you want it to be stopped. Because look, there are bad guys everywhere. There are bad guys in the north. There are bad guys in the south. Now, the leaders of both sides of the country need to come together and bring about solutions.
It seems to be having connection issues there. But before we reconnect back to Honorable Ali, you allow everyone to listen to what President Buhari said on the issue of security, because what we're discussing on the issue of open grazing also boils down to the issue of security. Take a listen to President Muhammad Buhari there.
Unfortunately, some of these challenges came in the shape of violent outrages, leading to loss of lives of many of our dear compatriots and the destruction of some of our infrastructure, including those devoted to improving our democratic processes. Once again, I want to render my sincere and heartfelt condolences to the families and friends of our gallant servicemen and women who lost their lives in the line of duty and as sacrifice to keep Nigeria safe. Let me assure my fellow citizens that every incident, however minor, gives me great worry and concern, and I immediately order security agencies to swiftly but safely rescue victims and bring perpetrators to justice. Fellow Nigerians, when you elected me as your president in 2015, you did so knowing that I will put an end to the growing insecurity, especially the insurgency in the northeast. But the unintended consequences of our scattering them in the northeast push them further in country, which is what we are now facing and dealing with.
Well, you heard the president there making promises about the issue of security and what he will do. He also said stuff about the economy and how he's handling that, and the hope that he has for Nigerians to keep up ahead of the coming days. Take a listen to President Buhari on the economy.
The Economic Sustainability Plan, our rebound plan for the COVID-19 pandemic, developed in 2020, is currently being executed. The plan is primarily focused on the non-oil sector, which has recorded phenomenal growth, contributing over 90% to the GDP growth in the first quarter of 2021. Though marginal, we have recorded GDP growth over 2 quarters, second quarter of 2020 and first quarter of 2021. 2021. This is evidence of a successful execution of the economic sustainability plan by the federal government. My vision of pulling 100 million poor Nigerians out of poverty in 10 years has been put into action and can be seen in the National Social Investment Program, a first in Africa and one of the largest in the world, where over 32.6 million beneficiaries are taking part. We now have a national social register of poor and vulnerable households identified across 708 local government areas, 8,723 wards, and 86,610 communities in the 36 states and the FCT.
That was portions of President Buhari's Democracy Day speech. A lot of people who said they've not heard enough from a lot from the president. He's been speaking from Thursday. We heard so much about him. He was in Lagos. He spoke and he had a few TV interviews. Part of some of the interviews the president had is what I'd like you to also listen to, and perhaps we'll have Honorable Aliyu continue the conversation with us.
I want Nigerians to be fair to this administration. They should reflect seriously at the time we came in, especially relative to Northeast and South-South. Where we are now, that's in time relativity. Resources, how much were we producing? How can you go to police station, kill the police if they are there, loot the armory, and burn the place?
Those are some of the interventions President Buhari made over the weekend and over the past week as Nigerians celebrate or commemorate June 12, Nigeria's Democracy Day. Honorable Adamu Aliyu, a former minority leader in the House of Reps and the chieftain of the APC, has been talking to us. Unfortunately, technology made itself prominent again, and some of the glitches that we're seeing. But I understand that we have him back now. Perhaps we should jump quickly to some other issues to raise the issue of freedom of speech. And let me, for example, raise this matter with you. Ààrẹ Ọ̀nà Kakanfò of Yoruba land, Gani Adams, is quoted in the papers today saying MKO Abiola wouldn't be happy in his grave that the democracy he joined to fight for has turned autocratic under the President Buhari government. How do you react to that?
It is not true. Absolutely. Just like what I said, how more democratic or how free anybody can be than to allow, as I told you, than to allow the entrance demonstration to happen, or people demonstrating all over the place the way they want, or people going on Twitter or on Facebook or even live demonstration to say whatever they want to say and nothing happens to them. So I thought Gani Adams would even commend President Buhari for immortalizing the MKO Abiola, all in national healing and so on and so forth. So, but let us not even join issues with, Are Onak account for, Gani Adams, but let us see as a people, because Are Onak account for is not like the Are Onak account for we know, with the MKO Abiola, who united this country, who went to Kano to win election, went to Enugu to win election. Not an Are Onak account for now that will sit and only protect the Yoruba race. No. We're talking of somebody who will heal this country. And somebody like Gani, he should be able to say things that will unite this country. We let him show some leadership qualities in believing in Nigeria, not in believing on his ethnic group only.
I would have loved to get your views on some of the issues raised by DK earlier on the issue of free speech and press freedom and what we're seeing under this government. If my producer could put up some of the clips of the police dispersing some of the protesters there, some of the unusual scenario that you will see happening in Nigeria when protesters take to the streets. And for example, Section 36 of the Nigerian Constitution guarantees the fundamental rights of an average citizen, and also the Police Establishment Act 2020 provides that you can notify the police of your intention to protest, and they are guaranteed under the law to protect you. In fact, Femi Falana, senior advocate of Nigeria, is saying that the Nigerian police should apologize to Nigerians for being treated in this manner. What is your view on the civic space when you see citizens, honorable, being dispersed in this manner because they took to the street to protest as citizens of the country under a democratic rule?
Well, the Nigerian citizens should apologize to Nigerian security agencies, the police inclusive, for burning police stations, killing police in this country. No country will sit by and watch the policemen being killed. No country will allow police stations being razed. But it happens in this country. So if Nigerians say the police should apologize, they should first of all, because look, we need these policemen. You remember during the answers when the police started to go off the street in Lagos, hoodlums came on the street and they are harassing everybody. So look, the police in this country are under taken care of. So the limited police we have in the country protecting you and I should not be vilified, should be encouraged. So to me, Nigerian police, we as Nigerians, all apologies to the members of the security agents, including the police in particular. In the southeastern part of this country, probably yesterday or today, a police station is razed. Probably a policeman is killed. Tell me which country will allow this kind of thing to happen. So if anybody, whether my brother Femi Falana or anybody comes to say the Nigerian police should apologize, no. If Nigerian police do anything wrong, they should also be taken to court, where if they go, if you sue them, you get judgment and the police will comply. But not in the name of freedom, you go and start burning places, and you think the police should just sit and look by in the name of freedom. This does not happen even in the United States of America, where they call themselves, the democratic leaders of this world. We have seen where people going to burn places in the United States and the policemen reacting, shooting, killing. It doesn't happen in this country. The police try as much as possible with maximum restraint, but they cannot stay and wait for you to shoot at them or to hit at them, all in trying to protect you. When you come out to demonstrate peacefully. All over the country, June 12, people that came out to demonstrate peacefully, nobody harassed them. But any group that came out to abuse, to burn public property, will be confronted by the police.
Honorable, perhaps it's a good point for us to close the program on the issue of allegations of nepotism and imbalance in some of the concentrations of the government of the day in some crucial appointments. You heard DK speak about that kind of situation. If in 30 seconds you can tell us, I mean, how difficult is it to balance some of these things if some Nigerians think that things are imbalanced in the concentrations?
Well, in the open, when you look at it, probably there is. But then these things are based on merit. If you remember what the president spoke when he spoke about the appointment of the new chief of army staff, where somebody thought that, look, why not an Igbo man? And what he said was that, look, you need to take somebody from the field. And somewhere from that field, fortunately or unfortunately, somebody from his ethnic group happens to be the one. So that's it. And you see, unfortunately also for us, the moment we don't see ourselves as one people. Now, when my brother Dike was saying that all the security architecture, that nobody is from that part of the country, which means, is he telling me now that you have to be from certain part of the country before you obey the law? No. You do not have to see your brother before you obey the law.
Honorable Adamu Aliyu, former minority leader in the House of Representatives and a chieftain of the APC, thank you so much for your reactions and your interventions tonight on the program. Thank you. So that's how we draw the curtain on the program tonight. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I'm sure Kimberly. Bye-bye.